Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Park Street, for inviting me to be part of this session. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach, but I'm going to talk about the trends of the last 25 years, right? Because my intent is to show you how all of these numbers that my co-presenters have shared with you, how they came to be. And it is my belief that they came to be because of bartenders. So let's take a look at some examples. And I'm going to start off with the Negroni, right? The Negroni. Everyone knows the Negroni. Your grandmother drinks Negronis. She probably drinks them with a different spirit base other than gin, right? But that was not the case 25 years ago. When I first moved to the US in 2006, I met people like Del DeGraff, Tony Abuganim, and Francesco Lafranconi, and they were all drinking Negronis. I'd never seen that in person before. I'd only ever read about Negronis, and I knew it was a classic drink. I'd never actually met anyone who drank them. I didn't know that they were still around, right? And if you're a bartender in the room enjoying a Negroni, think back to the very first one you had. It was probably recommended to you by a bartender, right? They were passionate about this drink. They weren't paid by Campari to drink them at that time. That would come later, right? But Campari was smart as a brand. They saw this. They backed the passion of these not just bartenders, but influential bartenders who are getting behind their product in a classic cocktail that had credentials. It had some integrity, some credibility. It had a place in history. And when it came back, Campari were quick and clever to back those individuals. By 2013, we have Negroni Week established, right? You can't just establish Negroni Week out of the blue. That was built off the back of, I say the work, but it's truly the labor of love, right? The passion that these kind of bartenders had. And of course, here in Germany, you had Mauro. We can't talk about the growth of the Negroni without giving a shout out to Mauro, who established the first rendition of his Negroni Cocktail Club here in Munich in 1998. So it's this slow kind of love and passion for a drink, for a category that really helped the Negroni on its way, right? Then you have certain influential bars. We'll take one from New York City. It's the center of the universe after all. Dante, right? They put on Negroni sessions. So now you've got a whole menu of Negronis. They weren't the only one to do it. There was a little bit of a joke. But there you're seeing and you're showing other bartenders and bar owners around the world that the Negroni can be adapted. It can be adapted to other spirit bases, which is genius because now the whole industry can get involved. So this is a very kind of clever way in which this cocktail just keeps growing and growing in popularity. And now, like I said, your grandmother probably drinks mezcal Negronis, which would have been just unheard of, even as a dream or a twinkle in the eye of someone like Del DeGraff 25 years ago. We'll go now to everybody's other favorite cocktail right now, the Espresso Martini, right? The Espresso Martini, created as the vodka espresso back in the early 1990s in London by Dick Bradshaw. Right there is our first clue, right? Created by a very well-respected bartender in a very important place and time in cocktail culture. So it's already got that credence, that credibility. Now, the Espresso Martini comes back in kind of the 2010s. So we're now in a different part of cocktail culture comeback. We're entering like the vodka pays the bills era, if you remember that. Vodka was ousted when speakeasies and gin came in, and then people remembered that vodka pays the bills, so we need to give it some love. Vodka brands were hiring brand ambassadors, and it was these brand ambassadors that kind of needed a new drink to hang their hat on. So they were the ones that sort of started to ask for espresso martinis again in bars. But now in the 2010s, we're in a different place and time in society. Coffee culture has developed significantly. If you think about the coffee you drink now compared to the coffee you drank 15 years ago, it's also very different. I hope it's very much better. Right? Different coffee products were available now, so maybe even a good cold brew concentrate is okay to put in an espresso martini. It wouldn't have been for Dick Bradshaw, but it might be now. And also better coffee liqueurs are available. So the whole opportunity of making a espresso martini starts to become better from a quality standpoint. And then we have this idea that the drink's fun, right? We're also entering this stage in cocktail culture, again, post-speakeasy phase, where bars are supposed to be a bit more fun again. So something like the Espresso Martini is a good reflection of that era. And it's something that consumers or guests can quickly jump on board with, because everything I've just said about for bartenders and the industry is also true for them. Next, we have Agave Spirits. Now, I'm relieved to hear that my co-presenters spoke about Agave Spirits, so we know that this one is true. Every bartender loves tequila. Every bartender loves Agave Spirits. They love them so much that they probably don't drink tequila anymore because it's had its day, right? Not according to the data. It's just starting to emerge around the world, outside of the biggest markets, which are US and Mexico. But the 100% de agave movement started again years ago by some very dear friends, some very passionate individuals. I'm talking about people like Jimmy Yeager and Steve Olson in the US, Thomas Estes, of course, here in Europe, and the wonderful Julio Bermejo. You see Julio and Thomas here. This really just epitomizes how tequila has grown. Again, a labor of love. Right? Thomas Estes opened the first Café Pacifico in Amsterdam in 1976. This is the beginning of why tequila is so hot right now, by the way. That's, 50 years ago or something like that. And then opened the one in London, the Café Pacifico in London in 1982. Julio has been doing amazing work in his family restaurant, Tommy's in San Francisco, literally using the margarita, America's favorite cocktail, and a drink that's understood the world over, to invite people in and show them that 100% de agave tequila tastes better and is better than other tequilas out there. Just opening people's minds and the ability to try 100% de agave tequila. It's the work of a few passionate individuals here that really gave a foundation for Agave Spirits, certainly in the US and London, especially during this time. One more example, it would be remiss of me not to talk about gin. So gin has had a long and storied history. I can't possibly go through all of that in the few minutes I have left. But in a nutshell, gin was huge in the 1800s. Gin survived Prohibition, fell out of favor to vodka, and then in this last cocktail renaissance came right back on top again, okay? Now, that wasn't just a natural order of things. There were a few passionate individuals that made sure this happened, and they were bartenders, because bartenders have always loved gin. Gin has always been the spirit of the cocktail. More classic cocktails with gin than any other category. More botanical inspiration for flavor to create drinks with than any other category. So while gin was falling out of favor, I think the stat, this might be the stat, by the way, I think the stat was in the US, it was 1976 that vodka first overtook gin, right? So vodka was on the up, gin was falling. In 1978, Javier de las Muelas, in the top photo here, opened Dry Martini in Barcelona. Now, of course, people were drinking gin around the world at this time, in London for sure, around Europe. But this was a bartender putting an homage back to gin, and particularly the Dry Martini. There he is at the altar in the original Dry Martini in Barcelona, where you can only make the Dry Martini. That was in 1978. Again, almost 50 years ago, to the gin craze boom that we're seeing right now. In 1980s, Del de Groff famously brought cocktails back to the world, one might argue, in the Rainbow Room, and gin was very well positioned all over that menu. People hadn't seen that before. It was really important that they put gin on a pedestal on that menu. In 1999, the Gin Palace in Melbourne, Australia opened, and it was one of the first kind of only gin on the back bar. It sounds every day today, but in 1999, it was an incredible leap of faith to put gin on a pedestal in that way too. 2005, Audrey Saunders and Julie Reiner opened the Pegu Club. 2013, Julie Reiner opens the Clover Club, literally 2 bars in New York City named after gin cocktails. The message from these very influential bartenders was very clear. They loved gin. Gin was important. Gin was at the heart of cocktail culture, And of course, their passion, their menus, their craft passed over to guests, okay? So everybody starts loving gin. Then you have things like the local craft distilling movement, which it's kind of a segue in for gin. Everyone wants to start making whiskey again after Tuttletown in New York got the first license to distill after Prohibition in the state of New York, and really kind of kickstarted craft distilling. Everybody wanted to make whiskey, but the thing about whiskey is you have to wait, right? At least a couple of years to make a whiskey. So what do you do in the meantime? You make gin because it's a lot quicker. I won't say it's easier, but it's certainly a lot quicker. So now you have gin just everywhere. Everybody has a gin that they're proud of from their hometown, because literally every town on this planet seems to be making a gin now, right? So all of these things helped the gin category to evolve, just one after the other. But it was all rooted, the comeback of gin was rooted in the decisions of a few passionate bartenders who were influential and so passionate about what they believed in that they started to influence their spheres and keep on rolling. So what is this pattern and how to use it? How can we use this to go forward? It's really finding out about what bartenders are passionate about. What's happened in the last, say, 5-6 years will come to be really important for brands in the next 10 or 15 years if the same pattern follows, right? It's a little harder these days because this new generation of bartenders are so creative and they're having original thoughts and taking our craft to a whole new level. It's less about reinstating the classics. That has been a little bit easier to predict. What comes next might be a little harder to predict. But if there's one message here, which is very clear, alongside all of this wonderful data, which is really important, and I know that you need to have evidence and proof, make sure you are listening to bartenders. What bartenders are passionate about, talk to them, and when you see their eyes light up, write that thing down, right? Because what they're passionate about, and if they're influential, will become a trend. The size and the scope, I can't predict, but it will be something important. This was a picture of me in 2005, right before I joined William Grant & Sons. I was a bartender, and when I joined that supplier, my goal, my mission that I chose to accept was to bridge the gap between brands and bartenders, because there is a gap. And that's something I took very seriously until my last day a couple of weeks ago. For 18 years, I kept one foot in the bartender community and one foot in the brand so that I could be a two-way communicator between the two. If you have a brand, it's really important to listen to bartenders and include them in your research. They've set the trends for the last 20, 25 years, and I believe that they will continue to do so. Thank you.